Hey everyone, welcome to Wealth Redefined. I'm your host, Michael Reynolds, certified financial planner and owner of Elevation Financial. Thanks for joining me today. Today, we're going to talk about navigating your child's transition to independence. We're going to talk through some key consideration for parents when your child transitions to becoming a more independent adult. So, it can be both a thrilling and overwhelming time. There's lots of legal, financial, practical issues to consider. They can all impact your child and your family's long-term plan. So whether your child is heading to college, entering the workforce, stepping into adulthood in other ways, taking the time to prepare for the transition can make a lot of sense, and make sure you kind of think through all of the considerations. So, first, let's talk about health, privacy, and legal access. So, one of the first things you might need to address as your child turns 18 is your continued access to their important records. So, under US law, once a child turns 18, they are legally considered an adult, which means they have the sole authority to manage their own health, academic, and financial information. And so, if you still want access to this information in emergencies, there are some specific steps you need to take. First, health records under HIPAA. So medical records are protected under the the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, or HIPAA, which we all heard of, I think. So you might need to ask your child to sign a HIPAA waiver. This allows you to access their medical records in case of emergencies or to help them manage healthcare decisions if needed. Also, educational records. The Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA, restricts access to your child's academic records once they enter college. So you can have your child sign a FERPA waiver to continue to assist with educational things like that. Also, medical and financial power of attorney. So consider having your child sign a durable power of attorney, which gives you the ability to make critical financial and medical decisions on their behalf if they were to become incapacitated. So these legal steps make sure that if there's a crisis or something happens, you can still help your child navigate the complexities of this stuff without unnecessary barriers. All right, next, residency and insurance considerations. So if your child is planning to attend college out of state or move to a new location, there's several residency and insurance issues that might need attention. So one is residency requirements. So you want to review in-state versus out-of-state residency requirements to see if your child qualifies for in-state tuition and what documentation is needed. States typically require proof of residency through a driver's license, voter registration, or other legal documentation to make sure your child receives the appropriate benefits. Health insurance. If your child is under 26, they're likely still eligible to remain on your health insurance plan. You'll want to assess whether staying on your plan is the most cost-effective option. You also want to decide if they should continue to contribute toward their portion of the premium, especially if they're working. Also, HSAs. If your insurance plan is an HSA eligible plan and your child is no longer dependent, they might be able to open and fund their own HSA, which could be an advantage to them. So look into that. All right, next, financial adjustments. Once your child moves out, your budget might change quite significantly. This is a great time to revisit your financial goals and plan for the future. So things like budget. You might need to make budget revisions. Without the regular costs of supporting a child at home, your expenses could decrease, but certain costs like college tuition or ongoing support might still play a role in your finances. So adjusting your budget now to account for those changes can help you manage your finances more effectively going forward. You might also consider downsizing or relocating. If your child leaving home means you no longer need as much space, downsizing or relocating could make sense for your financial and your lifestyle goals overall. A smaller home might reduce your mortgage or eliminate it if possible, while a move to a new location could lower your cost of living. So, often it's something we don't always think about. We're kind of used to living where we are, but it could be really practical to potentially downsize or move. Also, just reevaluate your financial goals. As your child gains independence, your long-term financial goals might change. They might shift. So whether you're planning for retirement, you want to do more travel, supporting family in other ways, you want to assess those financial goals and make sure they're still aligned with where you are in life. So don't be afraid to embrace change. We get complacent. We're good at status quo as humans. We're really good at kind of going with the flow and status quo, but don't be afraid to really take a hard look at where you are in life and what changes might help you flourish in a new phase of life when your child is independent. Next, let's talk about supporting your child's major life events. So you might be thinking about how to help your child with milestones like buying a car, making a down payment, paying for a wedding, and those can be pretty significant. So if you plan to help with major purchases, consider how the financial commitment will affect your own goals first. Make sure that you're really solidifying your own retirement. And then be mindful of things like your annual gift tax exclusion. So if you go over the annual gift tax exclusion, for example, be aware that you'll need to report those things to the IRS. Doesn't mean you have to pay gift tax necessarily, but it means you have to report anything over the annual exclusion on your taxes. So think of that when you're helping with things like, giving money for life events, things like that. All right, tax considerations. It could also change things with your taxes. Education tax credits, for one. If your child's attending college, you might be eligible for the American Opportunity Tax Credit or the Lifetime Learning Credit. So keep an eye on your income levels as those credits have phase out ranges. So if your income is too low or too high, you might want to strategize to maximize the credit. So if you want to do something different with your other tax credits and deductions, you can kind of work that. Also, dependent status. If your child is older than 24 and still a dependent, like attending college or graduate school, you might be eligible to claim them for other dependents, the other dependents tax credit. This can also entitle you to the lifetime learning credit. Also, kiddie tax. If your child has investment accounts, such as an UTMA or an UGMA, be mindful of kiddie tax. That tax applies to unearned income, which is dividends and interest over a certain threshold, and it's something you can watch out for to mitigate tax penalties. Also, insurance coverage. Consider purchasing renters or dorm insurance to make sure your child's possessions are covered while they're away at school. Your homeowner's insurance might extend, but you want to double check that to make sure. Also, risk management, future liability. Let's talk about that. So, as your child becomes independent, there's new risks, new responsibilities that can come up, and you can take some proactive steps to make sure that your family's liability exposure is minimized and that your child is financially protected. So, health and disabilities, for one thing. If your child has any serious health conditions or disabilities, you'll want to establish a strong support system before they leave the house. This could mean things like setting up long term care options, specialized health insurance, or even managing care remotely. Also, driving and auto insurance. If your child is still listed as a dependent and is driving, consider whether a separate auto insurance policy makes sense. This could provide some additional liability protection and help protect your own assets in case of an accident. Also, look at life insurance. With your children moving out, life insurance needs might also change. You might want to review your policy, see if adjustments might need to be made to the death benefit, or explore options like a 1035 exchange or surrendering the policy if you don't need it anymore. You could save some money if life insurance is no longer necessary at this stage. 529 plans. If you have unused funds in a 529 plan, you can transfer them to another child or consider utilizing the new 529 to Roth transfer feature, which is subject to some limitations. We have an article on this and a podcast on this also on the blog and the podcast. So take a look at that if you want. But, this allows you to transfer the funds elsewhere and still put them to productive use, even if you're not using them for education. So again, you can transfer a 529 to another beneficiary, or you can potentially transfer some of that 529 money out to your child's Roth IRA. So be sure you look into the details of the 529 to Roth transfer feature before doing it, because there's a lot of caveats, nuances, and ifs there. Next, estate planning considerations. So as your child becomes independent, you might think about revisiting your estate plan. One thing is you could update roles in your estate documents. Your child might be old enough now to take on more important roles in your estate documents, like power of attorney, executor, or trustee. This transition can give you a really good opportunity to involve them more meaningfully in your financial affairs and decisions. There's also state-specific issues to consider. So depending on where you live, there might be state-specific planning issues to address, like estate tax laws, which vary from state to state. So work with a professional on that as well. So overall, your child becoming independent is a big milestone. A lot of things to consider. Healthcare access, insurance, tax, estate planning. So you want to proactively address those issues to make sure that you've got a smoother path toward helping your child become more independent, also safeguarding your family's finances, and make sure you really have a thoughtful approach to supporting your child as they enter that next phase in life as well. So, as I close up with this one, sometimes I offer a visual checklist, and I do have a visual flowchart on this one. The podcast episode won't have it, but the podcast episode on the website will link to the blog post version of this, which at the bottom lets you download a visual flowchart of the article. So, if you want to get a visual flowchart that kind of visualizes all this stuff in more of a kind of a compact visual view, feel free to go get the article version of this, and you can download that visual flowchart, which might be handy. All right. So, with that, as always, thanks for joining me today. You can have a great day, and thanks for joining me as always. See you next time.